So how has BTS kind of helped me as a content producer? Man, that's a question I could probably talk about for a while. It's helped me a lot. I've been doing kind of my own way through esports for a while. I started in 2010 when StarCraft 2 came out, and I discovered Team Liquid. So I kind of came through the ropes in terms of being a content creator that had very little support, and I was just a total amateur college student. And then I finished university and kind of tried to turn it into a career, and sort of threw darts and learned through trial by fire and kind of figured it out as I went along. So all that experience before BTS really helped me. I did stuff with League of Legends cosplayers and with StarCraft folks and people that didn't seem like they'd be useful contacts in Dota 2, but esports is still a really small industry, so there's a lot of overlap, and all of that past networking I'd done and work with cosplayers has kind of come full circle. I was the one that got Gods' Enchantress cosplay commissioned. I was the one that commissioned the cosplayers for the Summit 2 as part of a sponsor obligation. So all that kind of stuff has really helped me at Beyond the Summit, but BTS sort of power farmed my knowledge of esports to some degree. As soon as I moved out there, it's basically just been nonstop esports. Nobody at the BTS house is from that area, so we've all moved out there to live together. So we all pretty much just stay inside and play video games and talk about video games and cast video games when we're not eating or sleeping. So it's pretty intense, but it's been really good. I've learned a lot about the Dota scene. I've learned an insane amount about the esports industry. I was a big part of BTS transitioning from being kind of the number 2 against Join Dota to being the dominant studio in the English-speaking Dota 2 space. So seeing that transition and getting to develop some firsthand experience with migrating from small scale to larger scale, even just doing stuff like the Summit. I mean, nothing replaces the experience of working an event like that. Aside from just working it. You can't really prepare or study. You just have to be thrown in there, deal with the sleepless nights, and just, take the issues as they come. So it's definitely improved my just general knowledge of the industry and ability to create content for sure. Well, I was hired by Valve to do the group stages for casting, so I kept busy for that stuff. For the main event, I don't have any official duties. Just basically, the way it works with Valve is, hey, we only need you to do this part. We're not going to make you go home early, so enjoy the event. And you're kind of on call or on standby if somebody gets sick or if somebody gets into an accident or whatever. So I actually lucked out a little bit today. I got to cast the last series, the VP versus Secret Elimination series on the newbie stream with Purge. They decided to add an extra game to that stream today, and OD Pixel or Owen is casting the series. It's going on right now, so he needed a little bit of rest. So I got to cast the main event, that one series at least, and that was really cool. I had a lot of fun doing the noob stream, and also just being able to cast kind of courtside is really fucking cool. It's really, really hype. It's really fun. It's completely different from any other casting experience I've ever had. So that was really cool. But aside from that, I'm mostly just enjoying myself and collecting content. Since I don't have any official duties, I've been trying to stay very visible, maximize my time with fans to sign autographs or just meet people and that kind of stuff. And I've been doing a little bit of content collection, sort of what you guys are doing. I've done a couple of interviews, but mostly focusing on cosplayers and various other people I bump into. There's a lot of press that are covering the big personalities like Media Day. Everybody wants to interview Dendy. Everybody wants to interview S4. I've been trying to focus on the players and people that are big contributors and have interesting things to say that aren't necessarily the names that will, people get really excited about. For example, I did a Zyori podcast with Knoxville, the stats guy here for TI5. Not too many people know that name, but it's really, really good podcast. I wish more people would listen to it, but I've been doing that kind of content. So just trying to get the best of all worlds, make some content, enjoy the event, and actually watch some Dota this year. Oh, man. There's not an easy answer to that question. What does one need to do to basically make esports a full-time job? The key thing is definitely persistence. There's this weird medley of things you need to be successful in esports. One of them is natural talent. And it depends on what you want to do. If you want to do broadcasting, there's kind of a baseline of ability to present or talk in front of the camera or deal with high stress situations that you just need to have. You have to have that natural, like, this is invigorating. When I'm in front of the audience, I get excited. It motivates me to give my all. A lot of people see the audience, and that is the opposite. You know, they get scared and they clam up, and it's a totally different experience. If you want to be a broadcaster and the audiences make you that nervous, then there's a little bit of a disconnect there. So broadcasting is not the only thing you can do in esports. There's always a need for good graphic designers, web developers, camera people, interviewers. There are all sorts of other things that you can do to still contribute in the esports space. So whatever your niche is, you need to have the baseline of skill to be able to do it at a decent level. And the reason you need that natural skill is because there isn't a great system or infrastructure in place to be able to say, I want to work in esports and I want to do X. You know, if you want to work in professional sports, you could get a degree in, turf management or sports management. Those sort of things don't really exist for esports. So you have to just kind of find your own path and go through the school of hard knocks. The second thing you need is luck. You need to be around the right people that have the money to the right people that need the skills that you have, that have the money to pay for it, and availability that lines up with your availability. There have been a lot of opportunities that have come across my path, but the timing isn't right, or the money isn't right, or my skill set isn't quite refined enough. I got lucky with BTS in the sense that I was casting Dota, I was doing show content, and I had been doing esports long enough that I was experienced relative to a lot of other folks that were casting Dota at the time. Part of BTS's plan in 2015, or I guess it was 2014 really, was to do show content like we did in the studio and all that kind of stuff. And I was doing the Dota Radio morning show when I first met the BTS guys, and they were kind of impressed that I was able to do my show and also cast, and that kind of spoke to my ability to manage simultaneous projects that don't have anything in common with each other. So it was just sort of fortunate that I was doing that show during the time when they were looking to hire a caster that could do show content. I didn't make any money off Dota Radio. That was purely a resume type building thing. And the third thing you need is experience, and that's the hardest one, because you get stuck in that chicken in the egg cycle, where chicken in the egg, where people won't hire you if you don't have any experience. And how do I get experience if nobody will hire me? And people ask me that question a lot. And there is really no trick to that. Day 9 said it very well one time. There's a quote that's always stuck with me. It's, you know what the secret to my success is? Every day I just show up. Basically meaning consistency. Is every day I just show up and I commit to doing this. I try to make it better. I put myself out there. You really have to stick with it. You need that perseverance to push through. You get a lot of rejections, as with all things in the entertainment industry. You get 9 no's for every one yes. So if you really want to do it, you just got to keep refining your skills and keep finding ways to make yourself stand out, find your niche. It's a crazy industry that moves really fast, and it's really small. Reputation is also really important. Don't burn bridges. That's another good little tip. That's another interesting question that you could probably talk about for a long time. The state of the workshop is kind of weird, given that there are a lot of artists that have been able to get items in the game that otherwise wouldn't really have gotten in, except for the fact that it's bundled with the tournament. And there's this weird symbiotic relationship where not all, but some workshop creators kind of need tournaments and that kind of stuff to get their items in. Even though they make less money, they still get something in the game, and that's usually the beginning of your kind of resume. It's like similar for workshop creators as it is for casters. You need that opportunity to get your break. So getting something in the game is really helpful for your resume. But it's always a give and take, because tournaments don't make a lot of money off of ticket sales because you have to split it with so many people, and workshop creators don't make a lot of money off of ticket sales because they have to split it with so many people, because it's always a collection of items, not just 1 or 2 items. So that's been an interesting just development from BTS of starting with we want to host a tournament, how do we get items in the game, how do we find workshop creators, to now where we have workshop creators we work with regularly, and K-pop Toasters has taken point on developing that whole system of working with creators and developing cosmetics ahead of time, so when we want to do tournaments we already have a repository built up to go for. So this is another convoluted answer to say, I guess it's okay. I mean, the relationship is always a struggle and a give and take. I don't think it's unique to BeyondTheSummit. I think every tournament has similar issues with just finding that balance of getting. You always, of course, want the highest quality items for the cheapest price. So there's always some midpoint that you have to strive for where everybody's kind of happy. But it's a struggle to get there. Unfortunately, getting items approved is a less than black and white process. So there have been instances where we've had issues where we think an item's approved and then last minute it doesn't get approved and you have to find something, scramble to find something to replace it. It's always a stressor and a struggle. And once everything's locked in the game and it's there and people can buy it, there's a huge sigh of relief of just, whew, all right, glad that's over with. Let's focus on the actual tournament now. So it's interesting how we have to work together, but I don't know, a workshop creator could probably give you a better answer than I could on that one. Well, obviously the inspiration was the Home Story Cup. I'm not really supposed to say that, but everybody knows it. It's unspoken. That was a really unique and good idea in the esports space. Part of it coincided with the fact that we had a big house. The BTS house is just, a lot of people live there, so it's a big space. So it was big enough to try to do a tournament like that. We wanted to. Someone gave us really good advice at the beginning of last year. That was, you need to control some content. Just being a third-party caster and fighting for rights with all of the other studios is probably not the best long-term business model. And that was fabulous advice. That was, we kind of wanted to do more of our own content, our own tournament, but that was kind of when we were like, okay, let's really do this. Let's make this happen. Because now it seems like, oh, of course, why wouldn't you do the summit? But before the first one, it was a pretty big risk. It was a really big monetary investment. We were nervous about the electricity in our house, not being able to keep up, the air conditioning, the internet. It's really hard to stress test that stuff because we don't have 90 people that we can just bring to the house. We don't have 40 computers we can just plug in on the fly and make sure the electricity can handle it. We did some math and some figures and brought in electricians, but you don't know if it's going to work until you're actually at the event doing it. So at the time it was a pretty big risk, but the motivation was basically to do something different. We wanted to do something that was a little more fun, a little more interesting, and just a little more interactive, honestly. That seemed to be the big thing that was missing, where players we didn't feel like they were very humanized, especially non-Western players, Eastern players in particular, China, SEA, that whole region. A lot of them don't speak English, or they don't do a lot of interviews in English, and we felt like an event like the Summit could help to kind of change that a little bit. And that was part of like the Summit 3, when we did the cast where we had Chuan casting in Chinese, and we had translators and Merlini and Lumi who are bilingual. Mixed feedback, but I think that cast represented kind of, it was a good representation of what we really wanted to do with the Summit, of humanizing players. And I think we achieved that, at least to some degree. Always a lot of things that I can't talk about. The Dota, not just the Dota 2 space, the esports space in general, but especially in Dota, there's a group of insiders that always have to talk about the future plans of what's going on so that tournaments don't overlap. There are stages of announcement where you go from super proprietary, where it's just internal in the company, then you go to the sort of the inner circle of, okay, DreamHack, are you doing an event? No. Okay, MLG, are you doing an event? No. Okay, you kind of double check the dates. And it's this weird balancing act of sort of trying to work together, but also claiming your territory to get the best dates for the events that you want. The Summit 4 is the big thing on the horizon. We announced tentative dates. I don't know what they are off the top of my head. It should be towards the end of this year. That's the big thing. Pretty much everything else is on temporary. We're not committing because we don't know what's going on with majors. This is a really interesting time for Dota 2 because majors will inevitably change the way our scene works quite drastically, with the locked-in player trading times, just the structured kind of prize pool so that there's more money that's spread out and accessible to different teams. All of that is going to have a profound impact on the industry, and it's hard to say exactly how. There are a lot of guesses. People can take educated guesses at what's going to happen, but nobody really knows. And I think the big question mark is how many mini majors will there be? Because between each major there will be a period of trading, and then there will be a period of kind of practicing. And during those smaller periods, people are going to run tournaments. And the question is, the questions are, how crowded will that space be? How large will the prize pools be in that space? And how many of the top teams will actually play in those tournaments? And what's the balancing act going to be between teams that want to play only the top tier prestigious events, like Secret, for example? They have the highest ratio of games played only on LAN. Like, of all the games they've played in competitive, it's mostly on LAN relative to other teams that do more of a mixture. So how many of those teams like that will have to play in other tournaments to get into majors? Will majors have mostly invites, or will it be mostly qualifiers? Will teams that are in that upper echelon, like top 5 teams, be able to play only majors and still feel safe about getting invites in the future? Will they have to grind these smaller tournaments and continually prove that they deserve to be invited? These are all questions that we don't have answers to, and all of these questions are really important in terms of trying to not only schedule tournaments but design the tournaments. The general design of tournaments has changed a lot, especially over the last 2 years. You look 2 years ago, and Star Ladder was the shit. You've got these giant 16-team round robins that were really cool. You've got all these matches, 300 online matches before the LAN finals, and that would get people hyped. Now, teams look at that and go, no thanks. That is not a good hourly for us based on how many games we have to play for the prize pool. Even casters look at that going, really? Do we have to grind another 150 games for this round robin? Can't we just... Is this the format? Do we need this every season? And the answer to that seems to be no. Those big group stages are great for really prestigious events like TI, but even TI did 2 groups of 8 instead of 1 group of 16. So that's been a big change, and those changes fluctuate based on how much money's in the scene, what other tournaments are doing, what kind of perceived value players have from tournaments with their prestige level, the viewership level, the prize pool. Players and teams are getting more savvy now. They're wanting to know about what kind of cosmetics you have for your tournament, so they can try and gauge ticket sales and try and guess if this is a tournament that'll crowdfund $1 million or crowdfund $30, all that kind of stuff. So BTS is always working on plans for the future. Part of what has allowed BTS to take a large market share is our ability to kind of gauge the environment, see where things are going, and try to come up with an innovative strategy before some of the other studios. So historically, we've been pretty quick movers, and hopefully we can keep up, and history will repeat itself. But unfortunately, there's not too much that I can really talk about or announce. I doubt you'll get clear-cut answers from really anybody working for a studio at this point, because everything's just up in the air.